So the NFL season is officially over, and with the combine going on as I record this video, I wanted to come on here and give my first ever NFL mock draft of the off season. So yeah, man, before we do get started, a few notes to keep in mind. One, I'm going to be doing only the first round. Two, there are going to be no trades in this video. Three, and the final thing, I'm going to be making these picks based off what I would do if I was that team's GM. And, of course, before we do get started, hit that like button if you guys end up enjoying this video, since it really does help out my channel. And subscribe if you guys are new and you guys enjoy content like this, so you don't miss out on any new videos. Plus, I'm trying to hit 2,000 subscribers, and when I do reach my goal, I will do a Q&A. But yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this video started. So with the first overall pick, I got the Chicago Bears via the Carolina Panthers, taking Caleb Williams, a quarterback from USC, of course. Look, I know Justin Fields really was not dealt the best hand in his tenure with the Bears, but let's be real. I mean, he was given 3 years to develop, which, if you ask me, that is a good time frame to let a young guy develop. And he's been average at best, and he struggles with many areas as a passer. And I really do feel like if he was the guy, he would have been at least an above average quarterback by now. But yeah, man, Justin Fields, I really don't think he is the guy, and I do think the Bears should move on from him, and I think they will move on from him this offseason. And Chicago really is not that far off from being a playoff team, and while Caleb Williams is not perfect at all, he is one of the best quarterback prospects in recent memory, and I think he's easily the best quarterback in this draft class, and he could finally be the franchise quarterback the Bears are looking for. And I mean, if he does pan out, then the Bears would have a really bright future, and if he does have a good rookie year, they definitely could make the playoffs next year. With the second overall pick, I got the Washington Commanders taking Drake May, a quarterback from North Carolina. The Commanders tried the Sam Howell experiment, and I mean, it really didn't work out. He was just really up and down and inconsistent, and while Caleb Williams is my quarterback one, I do think Drake May is the second best quarterback in this draft. And I mean, he's a good consolation prize. I mean, he's big, he's accurate, he has elite arm strength, he's pretty mobile, he's a good processor, and I'd say for the most part he does have good pocket presence. Flaws for him, I'd say he can make a few bad decisions, he can lock onto his first read as well, and there are times when he does run into some sacks. So but with that said, I do think he should be the pick here, and I mean, hopefully he does work out better than the last two major North Carolina quarterbacks. But with the third overall pick, I got the New England Patriots taking Marvin Harrison Jr., a wide receiver from Ohio State. Now, as a Patriots fan, I went back and forth here as to between MHJ and Jaden Daniels, and I totally get it if you want to take a quarterback like Jaden Daniels here, but with that said, we do need top-end talent, period, and a wide receiver one, and I'm recording this mock draft before free agency. This is basically like a pre-free agency mock draft, so we definitely could get a wide receiver one in free agency, but I mean, as of right now, we don't have one, and Marvin Harrison Jr., he's the best player available right now, and he satisfies both requirements of being a wide receiver one and just adding top-end talent to New England. And along with that, we definitely could get a quarterback at pick 34, and taking Jaden Daniels at number 3 is a little bit of a reach relative to how good of a prospect he is. I think he's good, but I wouldn't say he's like number 3 worthy. If he does go number 3, it's probably going to be because of positional value. Plus, I mean, if the Patriots don't like any of the quarterbacks outside of Drake May and Caleb Williams in this draft, then I don't think we should really force it, and we can definitely wait for a year and maybe make this rebuild a little bit more long-term, and we could try to grab one of the top guys in next year's draft class. And yeah, man, Marvin Harrison Jr., he is everything you want from a wide receiver, and personally, I'd be stoked if we took him. But again, with all of that being said, I do understand if you took a quarterback here, and I strongly considered that, and hey, who knows, maybe in the future I could take a quarterback at 3 for the Patriots, but for this mock, I'll take Marvin Harrison. With the 4th overall pick, I got the Arizona Cardinals taking Malik Neighbors, a wide receiver from LSU. I will say, I definitely considered taking like one of the top tackle, like Joe Alt, at number 4, but I went with Malik Neighbors. And ideally, the Cardinals would get Marvin Harrison Jr., and they definitely could trade back if they wanted to, but since we're doing no trades, I'm just going to take Malik Neighbors here. Arizona, they definitely need a number 1 wide receiver, and Neighbors, I mean, he's an amazing route runner. He's super fast and explosive. He has good hands. He's a great yak threat, and, he'd form a dangerous duo with, with Kyler Murray, and a wide receiving core of him, possibly Marquise Brown if he does come back. I don't know if he will come back. Michael Wilson, and along with Trey McBride at tight end, that is a really good offense. So, yeah, I mean, again, ideally Marvin Harrison Jr. would be the pick, but since he's not available, I do think Malik Neighbors is a really good consolation prize, and I think he'd be a really good pick for the Cardinals. With the 5th overall pick, I got the Los Angeles Chargers taking Brock Bowers, a tight end from Georgia. The Chargers do have a lot of holes on their team, but I'll take Brock Bowers. I mean, he's one of the best players available, and while Keenan Allen's really good, but he is kind of old. And Mike Williams, I think he will be released, and I mean, he could be released by the time this video is out. And Gerald Everett is a free agent, so I mean, they will need another receiving option next to Keenan Allen. And along with that, I do want to mention that Quentin Johnston, he had a pretty bad rookie year, so who knows if he's gonna pan out. But yeah, man, Brock Bowers, he is one of the best tight end prospects ever. He has very few flaws, and I mean, he'd be a really good weapon for Justin Herbert and a really good addition to this Chargers team. So they definitely could take Joe Alt here, I will say that. They definitely could do that. They could trade back if they really wanted to, if they want to get some more assets, but I'll go with Brock Bowers. And I mean, if Quentin Johnston can turn things around after a bad rookie year, a trio of Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, and Brock Bowers would be pretty lethal. So with the 6th overall pick, I got the New York Giants taking Joe Alt, a tackle from Notre Dame. The Giants do have a lot of holes on their offense. I mean, Saquon Barkley's a free agent, and I mean, he was one of the few bright spots on that offense. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of New York fans might want me to take Jaden Daniels, and I can definitely understand that because Daniel Jones, simply put, is just not the answer. But with that said, their offensive line is terrible, and I think taking the best player available would be a pretty good idea. And Joe Alt right now, I would say is the best player available with how the board has fallen. And yeah, Joe Alt, he is everything you want from a tackle. He's one of the best tackle prospects in recent memory, and he'd be a great addition to this offensive line. And I know Evan Neal is really adamant about staying at tackle, but he has been terrible so far, and I think he will, and he should be, moved to guard. So, an offensive line with Andrew Thomas, Joe Alt, John Michael Schmitz, and then, Evan Neal at guard, maybe if he can pan out, and then maybe you get like another, just serviceable offensive guard. That wouldn't be a bad offensive line. So Joe Alt, he would be a really good addition to this team. With the 7th overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select Olu Fashanu, a tackle from Penn State. The Titans' offensive line last year was the worst in the league, and there really aren't many bright spots on it outside of Peter Skoronski, who's like young and promising. Now, Fashanu, I don't think is as good as Joe Alt, and he does have some pad level issues, but with all of that said, I mean, besides that, he's absolutely amazing, and I think he'd be a really good addition to their offensive line. But with the 8th overall pick, the Atlanta Falcons are going to be taking Jaden Daniels, a quarterback from LSU. The Falcons really aren't that far off from being a playoff team. They just need a good quarterback, and Jaden Daniels, he won the Heisman last year, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. I mean, he has a solid arm. He has elite mobility. I'd say he's mostly accurate. He's a pretty good processor, and I do think he has pretty good pocket presence as well. Now, he's not a perfect player at all. His frame is kind of thin. He does lack velocity on his passes, and I definitely think he can do a better job of seeing the middle of the field. And I will say he is a little bit old for a draft prospect. But with all of that said, I think he could be the successor to Matt Ryan that the Falcons have been looking for. And while they definitely could sign a veteran quarterback, again, this is a pre-free agency mock draft, so they haven't signed a veteran quarterback at the moment. But yeah, Jaden Daniels, I mean, if you ever went to the Falcons and if you ever panned out, then the Falcons would easily make the playoffs. So with the 9th overall pick, I got the Chicago Bears taking Jared Verse, an edge rusher from Florida State. Now, the Bears definitely could go with wide receiver here, but I definitely think an edge rusher opposite of Montez Sweat. They also do need an edge rusher opposite of Montez Sweat. And Jared Verse, he is explosive, he has a good motor, he has good technique, he's lengthy, and he's also really smart. And I think he'd be a really good complement to Montez Sweat. I will say he does miss some tackles and sometimes plays a bit too upright. But with all that said, I think he's the best edge rusher in this draft, and him and Montez Sweat would be a really good combination. With the 10th overall pick, I got the New York Jets taking J.C. Latham, a tackle from Alabama. Look, the Jets' offensive line is downright terrible, and they need to improve it if they want Aaron Rodgers to stay upright and to remain healthy. And J.C. Latham is the third best tackle in a really good tackled class. And I mean, he's massive, he has good agility, and he's really strong, of course, because he's massive. He has good hands, and he's also a really good run blocker as well. And he can have some issues versus speed rushers and get a little bit grabby, but with all of that said, J.C. Latham would be a really good addition to their offensive line. And because of his size, he could play guard if they need him to, so yeah. With the 11th overall pick, I got the Minnesota Vikings taking Laiatu Latu, an edge rusher from UCLA. The Vikings, they could go in a lot of different directions here. They could go with the quarterback, a defensive tackle, cornerback, a lot of different directions. But I chose to go with Laiatu Latu because their defense needs a lot of work. Danielle Hunter, he is a free agent, and even then, I mean, if they are able to retain him, they do need someone next to him, and Laiatu Latu, I'd say he's the second best edge rusher in this draft. He's got great size, good technique, he's explosive, a great motor, and he sheds blocks well, and he's a really good pass rusher, but I definitely think he can he definitely can improve his run stopping, and he did have a neck injury at Washington, which forced him to medically retire temporarily, so that is a bit of a red flag. But with all that said, I really do like Latu a lot, and he would be a really big boost to Minnesota's defense. With the 12th overall pick, I got the Denver Broncos taking Michael Penix, a quarterback from Washington. Russell Wilson's time in Denver, I think, is ending this offseason, and they need a long-term answer at quarterback. Now, I know Michael Penix has a pretty bad injury history. I mean, it is really bad. And he's definitely older compared to most draft prospects, and his ability to handle pressure, it's really inconsistent. Sometimes he's fine, but other times he's an absolute mess. But with all of that said, I really like him, and keep in mind, Oregon's my college football team. I despise Washington, but I like Michael Penix a lot. I mean, he has a cannon of an arm, great accuracy, especially deep accuracy. He's a good processor, and I think he has really solid mobility as well. I mean, I'd say he has solid mobility, and you know, as long as the protection around him is good, I think he can be the Broncos franchise guy. And keep in mind, he can improve on his weaknesses. So who knows? Maybe he can improve, you know, his ability to handle pressures. So with the 13th overall pick, I got the Las Vegas Raiders taking Bo Nix, a quarterback from Oregon. Like Michael Penix, a lot of people don't like Bo Nix, but I mean, I like Bo Nix a lot. I mean, I know I'm an Oregon fan, but I definitely think that, you know, he is worthy of being taken in the first round. And the Raiders, they can go in a lot of different directions here, whether that be cornerback, edge rusher, a defensive tackle, offensive line. They also could go for a quarterback, and I'll go for a quarterback because the Raiders, they do need a long-term franchise quarterback because Aiden O'Connell, he's a really good backup, but I definitely think he limited the Raiders a lot last year. And they nearly made the playoffs, so with good quarterback play, the Raiders definitely could make the playoffs, even in a really loaded AFC. Bo Nix, he's accurate, he's a good decision maker, he's got a really good arm, he's super mobile, and he's really good at playing out of structure. I definitely do see some concerns, though, like his age, the system he played in. It definitely simplified his reads, and you know, his footwork can be off sometimes, but with all that said, Bo Nix is a really good prospect, and I think he'd be a pretty good pick for the Raiders. With the 14th overall pick, I got the New Orleans Saints taking Rome Odunze, a wide receiver from Washington. I'm surprised Odunze fell this far in my mock draft, but I mean, that's how things played out, and Michael Thomas's time with the Saints is coming to an end soon, and even then, he's like really injury prone, and the Saints, they need another wide receiver next to Chris Olave because of that, and Rome Odunze, he would be the best player available in this scenario, and would be a great number 2 wide receiver because he's big, he's great at coming down with contested catches, he's a great route runner, has solid speed, good hands, and he's a solid yak threat, so he'd be a great addition. With the 15th overall pick, I got the Indianapolis Colts taking Terrion Arnold, a cornerback from Alabama. The Colts cornerback room is not good, to say the least, and their best cornerback, who happens to be pretty good, even in a pretty bad cornerback room, is Kenny Moore, and he's a free agent, so who knows if he comes back or not, but even if he does come back, they need some help there. And Terrion Arnold, I think he's the best corner in this draft. He's got good ball skills, he's explosive, he also has good instincts, he's good in zone coverage, and he's a good tackler, and if he did pan out, he could be the Colts' #1 cornerback. With the 16th overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks select J.J. McCarthy, a quarterback from Michigan. Like Bo Nix and Michael Penix, a lot of people do not like J.J. McCarthy, and I feel like people either love him or they don't like him at all. Now, I don't really get all the hate. J.J. McCarthy, there are concerns like his frame being kind of slim. His deep accuracy is inconsistent. He can also work on his decision making, and he definitely needs to work on throwing with anticipation and touch. And I think he is a guy who really does need to sit for some time before he does play. But with all that said, the physical tools are there. I mean, he's a great arm, he's mobile, he can play out of structure, and along with that, he is accurate in the short and intermediate areas, and he has really good pocket presence. And his upside, it's pretty high. So the Seattle Seahawks, I think they are a really good landing spot for J.J. McCarthy. I think he needs to go to a team where he can, sit for some time before he does play. And, Geno Smith, he's nothing crazy, but he definitely could hold down the fort for a little bit before McCarthy does take over. And the Seahawks, they do need a long-term answer at quarterback. And I think J.J. McCarthy, if he can iron out his issues, he could be the long-term answer. With the 17th overall pick, I got the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Taliesin Fuaga, a tackle from Oregon State. The Jaguars had a mad disappointing 2023 season, and they could definitely go in a few directions here, whether that be offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver, cornerback. But with all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and address their offensive line, which is really lackluster. I love Taliesin Fuaga, despite the fact that I'm an Oregon fan. But Taliesin Fuaga is undeniably one of the best tackles in this class. He is big, he has great pad level, really good hands, he's powerful, and he's also a really good run blocker and can definitely boost their run game. And I will say, he can be a little bit over-aggressive, and he does play right tackle, which could cause some conflict with Anton Harrison, who's, one of the few bright spots on that offensive line. And Anton Harrison also does play right tackle, so one of them would have to play left tackle. But with all of that said, Taliesin Fuaga would drastically improve this offensive line. With the 18th overall pick, I got the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Jackson Powers-Johnson, an interior offensive lineman from Oregon. The Bengals O-line still has some holes, and if they want Joe Burrow to remain healthy and, get over the hump and win the Super Bowl, they got to improve that offensive line. I know we've been saying the same thing for the past few years, and the Bengals have tried, but it's still something they need to work on. I mean, Jackson Powers-Johnson is one of the best O-linemen in this class. He's athletic, he uses his hands well, he's smart, and he's also good as a run and pass blocker. And I know he does play center, so they could have him play center and move Ted Karras to guard, or they could have him, Jackson Powers-Johnson, play guard. But either way, I mean, he does fill a hole on the interior of their O-line, and I mean, if he does pan out, then this Bengals offensive line would improve by a lot. With the 19th overall pick, I got the Los Angeles Rams taking Kool-Aid McKinstry, a cornerback from Alabama. I am very, very confident that the Rams are going to be addressing their defense with this pick like they should. They could go for an offensive lineman, but I'm very confident it's going to be a defensive player. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, I know he had a foot fracture, which is why he's not going to be participating in the combine, but with all of that said, he's really good. I think he's the second best cornerback in this class after his teammate Terrion Arnold, because he is fast, lengthy, has good hips, great ball skills, is a good tackler, and he's also pretty good on special teams. And the Rams really need to improve their defense if they want to get back to contention status, and I think Kool-Aid McKinstry would really elevate this defense. With the 20th overall pick, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Cooper DeJean, a cornerback from Iowa. The Steelers secondary, it's bad. I mean, they need help at cornerback and safety, because Joey Porter Jr. and Minkah Fitzpatrick are their only bright spots in the secondary, and DeJean, he is athletic, he has great ball skills, good instincts, he stops the run well, and he's versatile because he can play both corner and safety, and, you know, he can fill either need for them. I do think he can improve his hips, but with all of that said, Cooper DeJean is amazing, and like Kool-Aid McKinstry, he's good on special teams as well, so. With the 21st overall pick, I got the Miami Dolphins taking Troy Fautanu, an interior offensive lineman from Washington. It's kind of, I mean, a lot of people don't know whether to classify him as a tackle or a guard, but either way, I think he is pretty good, but I think he will play guard in the NFL, but the Dolphins' O-line, I wouldn't call it awful, but that said, it definitely could use some work, and both Connor Williams and Robert Hunt are free agents, and, you know, Troy Fautanu, while I did say that there is confusion about whether he's a guard or a tackle, I think he does have good versatility and could play, you know, either position. He's athletic, he's lengthy, he's a good run blocker, but with all of that said, I definitely think he can improve his balance and strength, and sometimes he does get out of position in pass sets. But with all of that said, I think Troy Fautanu would really help out this offensive line. And while I do think he is mainly a guard, he can play tackle sometimes, and if they need him to play tackle. But he would be a really good selection for the Dolphins. With the 22nd overall pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Quinyon Mitchell, a cornerback from Toledo. The Eagles' secondary sucks. Let's just keep it 100. Their secondary is just downright terrible. And I mean, Darius Slay is like their only good and reliable cornerback at the moment, but even then, he's getting up there in age, and he did regress a little bit last season. And Quinyon Mitchell, I mean, he is absolutely amazing. He has great ball skills, he's really fast, a good tackler, and he has really good instincts in coverage. He can be a little bit over-aggressive, and I know he did play in the MAC, and I mean, it's not every day when you see players playing in the MAC that become like really good NFL draft prospects and all that, but Quinyon Mitchell, he'd be a really big boost to this Eagles secondary, and he is one of the best cornerbacks in this draft class. With the 23rd overall pick, I got the Houston Texans via the Cleveland Browns taking Jerzon Newton, a defensive tackle from Illinois. When I was writing the script for this video, I was super duper shocked that Jerzon Newton fell this much, but I mean, here he is, and if he's here, and I'm the Texans, I would probably take him. I mean, Jerzon Newton, I mean, he is absolutely amazing as a prospect. I think he's by far the best defensive tackle in this draft. He has good pass rush moves, uses his hands well, he can stop the run, he has a good motor, he's agile, and he also has really good bend and is overall amazing. And the Texans' defense, I'd say it's pretty solid, but Sheldon Rankins, he is a free agent, so they could use some help at defensive tackle. And again, Houston could go in a few directions here, but I'll go with Jerzon Newton. He's the best player available, and he'd be, I mean, he does kind of fill a position of need. And a defensive line with him, Will Anderson, Malik Collins, who's quite solid, and Jonathan Grenard, if he is re-signed, that would be absolutely scary, to say the least. With the 24th overall pick, I got the Dallas Cowboys taking Jordan Morgan, a tackle from Arizona. The Cowboys could go in a lot of different directions with this pick, but I'll take Jordan Morgan because Tyron Smith, he is a free agent, and even if he does resign, while he is good, he is super old, and he is super injury prone. And Terrence Steele, he was pretty bad last year, so who knows if he can bounce back, and if he doesn't bounce back, he's definitely a guy the Cowboys will look to move on from. And Jordan Morgan, I like him a lot. He's a good pass blocker, he's athletic, he has good hand usage, and he also has pretty good size as well, and I think he'd be a really good addition to this offensive line. With the 25th overall pick, I got the Green Bay Packers selecting Graham Barton, an interior offensive lineman from Duke. I did struggle a lot with this pick, and I got kind of stumped, but I ended up going with Graham Barton because the Packers' offensive line, they do have a few good pieces, but their interior could use some work because John Runyon, I mean, he's pretty mediocre, and he's a free agent. And then their center, Josh Myers, he's not really that good. So, along with that, they need a tackle. And to be quite honest, I'm not as high on Amarius Mims and Tyler Guyton compared to other people. So I'll go with Graham Barton because he's versatile. He can play all over the offensive line. He's physical. He has really good play strength. He's a good run blocker. And I think he does have pretty good hand placement for the most part. So he'd be a really big boost to their offensive line. With the 26th overall pick, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Dallas Turner, an edge rusher from Alabama. Shaq Barrett was released recently, and Yaya Diaby, he had a really good rookie year, and he was really underrated. But with all of that said, like, the Buccaneers now need an edge rusher opposite of Yaya Diaby. Dallas Turner, he is incredibly athletic. He's super lengthy. He has great pass rush moves, and he sets the edge well. But with all that said, I think he can improve his ability to stop the run and his hand technique. But he has loads of potential, and I think he could be a really good addition to this defensive line and be a really good replacement for Shaq Barrett. I will say the Buccaneers could go for another position as well, but I definitely think taking Dallas Turner would be a pretty good move. With the 27th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals via the Houston Texans, I got them taking Nate Wiggins, a cornerback from Clemson. The Cardinals need help all over their defense besides safety, and I mean, Nate Wiggins, he is great in press coverage, and he is one of the best cornerbacks in this class. I mean, he's smart, he is super fast. I mean, he just ran like a 4.29 today as I recorded this video. He's tall, good in man coverage, as I said before, and he also has really good hips. I will say, he does have issues with his pad level, his lack of physicality, and he can also be a gambler. And I will say, while he is pretty tall, his frame is kind of lean, as he's like I want to say he's like in the mid 180s. So that's not very heavy for NFL standards. But with all that said, Nate Wiggins is really good, and I think he could be a really good player for the Cardinals. With the 28th overall pick, the Buffalo Bills, I think they're going to be... I got them taking Adonai Mitchell, a wide receiver from Texas. The Bills need a wide receiver too badly. And Adonai Mitchell, I think he's the best wide receiver available here. I mean, he's a good route runner. He has pretty good hands. He has long limbs, and he also does have quite solid speed. The only issues is the fact that he is a little bit slim, and he does lack physicality because he has like a more slim frame. But with all of that said, Adonai Mitchell, he's really good, and I think he'd be a really good pick for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm confident that they'll be taking a wide receiver with this pick. With the 29th overall pick, I got the Detroit Lions taking Ennis Rakestraw, a cornerback from Missouri. The Lions CB room, I mean, it is atrocious, and it needs some work to say the least. Ennis Rakestraw, he is a terrific man. He's a terrific man corner. He has great hips, really good instincts. He's lengthy, and he's also a willing tackler. Really, the only issues is the fact that he can be a little bit grabby. His frame is is kind of lean, like Nate Wiggins, and along with that. But with that said, I do think Ennis Rakestraw would be a really good addition to the Lions secondary. And I mean, hey, if the Lions cornerback room can just be solid, then they very well could win the Super Bowl. With the 30th overall pick, I got the Baltimore Ravens taking Brian Thomas, a wide receiver from LSU. I was deciding between a corner, a wide receiver, or like an edge rusher, and I mean, maybe if the Ravens do like Marius Mims and Tyler Guyton more than I do, they could go for one of those guys too. But with all of that said, I went with Brian Thomas here because I think he's the best player available, and the Ravens do need a wide receiver too, because Odell Beckham, I mean, he's fine, but I wouldn't call him like wide receiver 2 caliber at this point. I mean, who knows if he really is. Plus, he is a free agent, and he's kind of old, and Rashad Bateman, he's been a total bust at this point, up to this point, which is pretty disappointing because I liked Rashad Bateman a lot coming out of Minnesota. But Mark Andrews, I will say he's great, and Zay Flowers is pretty good. But Brian Thomas, he's big, he's fast, he has good hands. I'd say he's a pretty solid route runner, and if he does pan out, then the Ravens' weapon group would be really good. And I mean, yeah, he'd be a really good addition to this team. And with the second last pick of this mock draft, I got the San Francisco 49ers, 31st overall, taking Kamari Lassiter, a cornerback from Georgia. The 49ers secondary really does need some work, and Kamari Lassiter is one of the best cornerbacks in this draft. He has good instincts, good ball skills, he's a good tackler, and I think he's really good in zone coverage. But with that said, he can improve his press coverage, and he is a bit of a gambler, and like Nate Wiggins and Ennis Rakestraw, his frame is kind of light. But with all of that said, he could be a really big addition for this secondary. And their secondary is a big reason why they just fell short of winning the Super Bowl this past year. So, yeah. And with the 32nd and final pick of this mock draft, I got the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Troy Franklin, a wide receiver from Oregon. The Chiefs' wide receiving core was putrid in the regular season. Now, they did step it up in the playoffs and ultimately won the Super Bowl, which is great, obviously. And I mean, that was especially the case because Kadarius Toney stopped playing, and I mean, he sucks. But yeah, point is, the Chiefs' wide receiving core in the regular season was absolutely putrid, and it led to the Chiefs' wide offense definitely struggling a little bit during the regular season, and I think they need to address wide receiver this offseason. Travis Kelce, we know how good he is, but he is aging, and if they want to have a smoother regular season and a long-term #1 weapon, they should be drafting a wide receiver here. And Troy Franklin, he is tall, he is super fast, he's a good route runner. He has, I'd say, pretty solid hands. There's definitely some issues with ball tracking and all that. And Troy Franklin's also a good yak threat. Yeah, onto his issues. He's not a good contested catcher. And large part of that is because he's pretty thin. And along with that, he does have some issues with ball tracking. But again, Troy Franklin is absolutely amazing. And he would be dangerous with Patrick Mahomes throwing him the rock. And Andy Reid also being the offensive mind that he is. But yeah, with all of that said, that's pretty much all I gotta say for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really does mean a lot to me. Again, like, subscribe, do all of that stuff, and yeah, check out my social media. The links to my Twitter and Instagram are in the description below. But yeah, without further ado, I'm out, you guys.